Hello, everyone. Welcome. You may have noticed I picked a totally different 30-second countdown timer today.
You even surprised me. That was exciting.
I know it's
very exciting.
That one gets your blood flowing a little bit more. Anyway, welcome everybody. This is Office Hours. We're here for the next hour to answer your questions about Alexa, voice design, ambient computing, software development, whatever you've got. Those folks in the UK always ask if that is the BBC News countdown music. I believe it is very similar, but no, that's from a stock video website that I picked up like a year and a half ago, and I think it must sound very similar because I get that comment a lot from the folks in the UK. Anyway, welcome everybody. I see we've got a bunch of folks that are familiar with the BBC countdown clock. Ryan, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, before we get into the questions, is that I made a purchase this morning. I don't know if you saw, I mentioned it on Twitter, but
no, not yet.
This is one of those things that has been hyped up for about a week or two, and it was a pre-order, and it was very, very hard to get it all. And my wife and I both tried to get one, and somehow she lucked in because she had all of her information saved in her Target account, and I did not. The time it took me to fill out my credit card information, they were all gone. So this is what I got.
Ooh, I've seen those.
Now, we already have an Xbox Series X, but this is a refrigerator.
That is amazing.
And it looks
amazing.
Looks just like an Xbox Series X. Man, I'm pumped. It's not for me. I'm actually going to be surprising my son with that for Christmas. I think he'll think that's awesome to have a little mini fridge down in the basement.
They're almost as hard to get as the Xbox Series X's right now.
It is. So, oh my God, dog. I have a bunch of construction happening in my house this week. And so the guys are in and out, and apparently they're being very polite and ringing the doorbell, even though I told them, please just come in. I'm busy for this hour. So as we wait for questions to come in, Ryan, I'm gonna disappear for 1 second. I'll be right back.
Alrighty. A. Witter says, you need my beer fridge skill for that. Ooh, I am intrigued. I would like to know more. But he did say that is for his son, so I don't think that is the most appropriate use of your beer fridge skill, A. Witters. Let's see, who else is here? Trade Last, hey, how's it going? You're there on Twitch. W. Giorgio's here, A. Witters. What is going on, everybody? Startup Santana. Sorry, getting used to all these names. All right, we're getting some questions coming in. Welcome back, Jeff. We got a couple of questions.
All right.
Oswet on YouTube says that when submitting a skill with notification feature for certification, what instructions should we specify for certifications? How is notification tested during certification process? That's actually a really good point. So I would, just like when certifying anything, I would just put down as much instructions as absolutely possible to give clear instructions. I would ask how you were testing it yourself. Yeah, Jeff, do you have any suggestions there? I haven't published a skill with notification, so.
First, I agree with you. I think that any and all instructions you can provide to the testers goes a long way in helping them understand what they're trying to do and how you want them to accomplish it. For notifications, though, how is notifications tested during the certification process? I would assume that they are going to test it like any beta user you would have. They're going to create the skill. They're going to have to register whatever notifications they have. They should follow the exact same process. So I don't know that there's anything necessarily different about doing this with a skill that has notifications. And they do have their own devices and things like that. So I would expect the testing to be the same, but I would be really clear about how your notifications work or how you would expect them to sound or whatever. Giving them any opportunity to predict or understand what's happening as it's happening is always beneficial. So as deep as you can go on your notification or on your certification testing instructions, the more I would recommend it.
Probably what notifications to expect, how to trigger them, things like that would be
that's
really
exactly
helpful as well.
What do I
Yeah.
need to do to make this notification happen? Is a great thing. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Fernando on YouTube says, hello, I'm developing a radio skill and use an API to get the name of the current song. How do I have the name of the song when someone asks what song is playing? Well, there's a couple of ways you can manage this. I think it depends a lot, Fernando, on how you are building your skill. If they are using the built-in audio player functionality, if they say what song is playing, the skill won't hear them. Because when they're in the audio player, they're actually not in your skill.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of the tricks with the audio player that you really need to navigate. You would need to have them in some way go back to your skill. How would I best do this? I'm sure there are people in the chat that are going to have recommendations for this because I haven't actually built a skill like this. But my understanding is that when your skill is in the audio player, it's not actually in your skill. And so even if you were to use the wake word and say, Alexa, what song is playing? I think you'd still run into the same situation. Having the data is easy. Getting it back into your skill, I think, is the trickier challenge here. But my recommendation, obviously, is if the user interacts, right? So if they were able to talk to your skill and they do say what song is playing, you have an opportunity at that moment to call your API, look up what song is actually playing, and then return that data back to them. And that should be a simple API call. But I don't
actually,
off the top of my head how to get back out of the audio player.
I actually need to solve this for myself soon because I'm planning on building a skill to kind of search through different office hours videos and things like that. And I'm planning on live coding this here shortly. But that's one of the things that I am designing out is to be able to say, Alexa, what episode was this from, so that someone could go and find that exactly it.
Right.
So very similar use case.
It looks like has added some more content down below. In addition to his question, I couldn't get it through an intent. It seems the skill stopped and only the radio stream continued. Yes. So what I just described is kind of the expected behavior. Now, that being said, I know that there are ways to do this, and it's probably documented in our technical documentation. But I want to say that there's something like you can use the stop or cancel intent or a go back. Because I feel like if you stop the audio stream, that returns it to your skill. Pretty sure. But the challenge isn't the command. It's training your user to know the command. Because what they are going to say is exactly what you're describing. Who is this? What song is this? Or what artist is this? Or whatever. And your skill isn't able to handle that. So this is one of those things that unfortunately we don't have a really great story around because of that limitation with the audio player. Your other option, of course, is to play something through APL, but you run into a bunch of audio limitations there. You wouldn't be able to listen to the radio for hours through that like you can through the audio player. So Fernando, I want to work through this with you because I feel like we should have a more clear story about this. So if you aren't already a member of our Slack community, what I would recommend is run over to alexa.design/Slack, and you can find me at my username at Jeff Blankenberg. And I think Ryan is there, same username.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to track down either of us in that community, I would love to continue to follow up on this with you, and that's a great way for us to stay connected after this stream is over. But I don't have an answer for you off the top of my head, and if we get an opportunity here, I'll try to dig in a little deeper. Donna on YouTube asked, when I'm uploading anything in my S3 bucket and calling the same file using the object URL in my main code, it doesn't get access. This is a very common problem that I see people run into, and this is probably because you have not made those files public. This is something that S3 will warn you 74 different ways. Hey, are you sure you want to make this file public? And you should say yes, 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 all the way through. But if the file is not marked as publicly accessible, which it is not by default, nothing you put in an S3 bucket is, even if the bucket is public, if you add a new file, that file will not be marked as public. So it's important to make sure that you're making each of your files public before you try to access them. That is 99% my guess as to what your issue is. But take a look at that and see if that doesn't help. I see we've got
by default, those are locked down quite heavily. And my personal preference, and I like to do this after I'm done development, is to put CloudFront in front of it, which is like a CDN and caching layer. It increases performance, actually saves money. So I would look at that. It's once you add that, then you have to start thinking about invalidating the cache and clearing it out if you upload new versions of files. But highly recommend that before you distribute it out for lots of people to use.
Yeah, because that S3 ingress will get you.
Yes, yes.
All right, Gavin Watson, I saw that you mentioned this in Slack already. I haven't had a chance to jump in on it, but I saw that you got a good conversation with David Lowe there. Ryan, basically the question here is, the skill is working just fine, but when he says, okay, here it's time to play the audio stream, and he feeds the stream in, it fails. It doesn't even call to their server. They're not even seeing the call happen. He says he's raised it via contact us form, but any ideas on what this could be? Could some devices pick up and then it cut off?
Is there a follow-up, or is it just gone?
Yeah, it just cut off. So I didn't get any more than that, but could it be some devices pick up an issue? Yeah, I know that some of the early devices, and I know David Lowe mentioned this as well, some of the earlier devices do not always play as nicely or consistently as we would like. But I think opening up a contact us form, this doesn't feel like it's a you problem. And so contact us should be the right place for them to escalate and get this on the radar of the appropriate tech team to take a look at. So hopefully, Gavin, that points you in the right direction, but you have done the right thing so far. But I don't think that's something we're going to solve today. And it's certainly not something that I have personally seen. Jalwork on Twitch says, my skill won't run on my Echo Auto. It's okay on the Echo Dot in the show. The skill doesn't launch the skill, and I get the message to control a video device with your voice. You have to connect it first and then set up that Alexa app. The skill does use APL. Okay, so one of the big rules about using APL is that you cannot send APL to a device that does not support APL. It does not like that very much at all, and in fact probably gives you an error similar to this. What surprises me, though, is that you said you're doing this on an Echo Dot, and it is not causing an issue for you. So this leads me to one of two questions. One, does the Echo Auto indicate that it supports APL incorrectly? Or is the way that you are sniffing whether APL is supported incorrect? It's one of the two.
That's what I was wondering. I was wondering how... because in your Lambda function or your backend code, you check to see if the device supports APL. If it does, you send back the APL directive. Otherwise, you send back just the normal audio response. So I'm curious how you're doing that detection. And because the Dot is the one that tricked me up as well, because if it works on the Dot, it should work on the Echo, the same sort of detection device, unless you're doing something a little funky, but I'd love to know. There's a really simple, I was just looking it up, is APL supported, that comes through in the requests to your skill backend that you can pivot off of.
Yeah, there's a built-in function, right, in the SDK?
Yeah. Yes. Of course, I can't find it when I'm looking for it.
No, it's never, you can never find it when you need it.
I've copied and pasted it dozens of times.
That's the rule of every website on the internet, in fact.
But let us know how you're doing it, or says the skill doesn't launch.
Yeah, I checked for screen support in my code, and the skill just doesn't launch at all. This is almost, I mean, you describe the error you're getting, and I'm assuming you've already Googled that error to see what you find there. To control a video device with your voice, you have to connect it first. I think I need to know.
I couldn't imagine it's just looking. So it doesn't even call any of your skill. Doesn't call the launch. Doesn't call anything. I have a Echo Auto. I'll have to This might be something to test.
Yeah, I also wonder what else the skill does. Like I just found some issues where a guy is trying to control his TV with his Echo and he's getting that error. Or in some way, it seems to me like that error, based on the very cursory search I just did, is for when you're trying to control a device like a Fire TV or a smart television, and it does not know of a connection that it should have. So I don't know how that relates to your skill at all, but it seems to me that somehow maybe your Echo Auto is misinterpreting what you're saying and trying to connect to a TV or a device that it doesn't have access to. But that feels like a long shot to me. Again, Joel Work, if you want to follow up with us on Slack, I will continue to dig into this. I'd love to know
Yeah,
more.
I'd love to dig in with this as well.
All right. W. Giorgio says, when using S3 on a hosted skill, I know I have to use get S3 pre-signed URL to get stuff from there. Is there another way to get items from S3 in APL or APLA? If not, is there a way I can pass a bunch of items? I haven't actually, and Ryan, this might be a good one for you. I haven't actually used S3 in a hosted skill. In fact, I almost exclusively don't build hosted skills.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know there are limitations, but I haven't personally experienced many of them. Is this get S3 pre-signed URL? Is that a SDK function?
It is. It's like a helper function. So in a hosted skill, the S3 that's there, they don't make any of those items public. But in S3, this is outside of Alexa, is just an S3 functionality. You can get pre-signed URLs, which usually have an expiration time. And the idea being that you can give out these URLs as secrets to different individuals and say, you have an hour to go download this asset, only you have access to it. And then after the expiration, then that URL is invalid and so on. So that's what gets exposed. There's a helper function to be able to go and fetch those items. So you don't have to make the items public. So they're it's kind of like security through obscurity for a given point in time.
Basically. Sure, but so the Alexa hosted S3 bucket though, when you call that pre-signed URL, is that generating a new one with an expiration?
Yes, I don't know what the expirations are. It may be, you can do endless, but what it does, it gives you back a URL that is some obscure link to that asset that's unique every single time you call that.
That makes sense. And then even if it did expire, I mean, if it's generating a new one every time, that wouldn't really even matter. It could have an expiration date of a couple of minutes.
Right. Exactly.
Interesting. Okay. If not, is there a way I can pass a bunch of items? So it doesn't appear that way, especially for the hosted stuff. I think this is one of those costs of using the free service, is that you have to kind of jump through a couple of hoops that you wouldn't otherwise, like using these pre-signed URLs. I mean, for me, anything that I'm going to host inside a skill, I'm probably just going to mark as public and then use the URLs directly, or like Ryan mentioned, use CloudFront or something. But
so is there another way to get items from S3 and API? So you should be able to load them. So what I'm thinking in my head is that in your Lambda function, you go call get pre-signed URL for all the different assets. You have to call it for, if you have 10 items, you get 10 URLs, and then you stuff that into the data sources of the APL directive. And so your APL document just has references to those data sources, and then it's able to pull that in. So then, because these are dynamic links, so they're going to change every single time. So you can't put them into the APL document. You can't hard code them in. But you should be able to add them to data sources, which are designed to hold different variables. The other option here is to create your own AWS account, host an S3 bucket, make everything public, and then you're good to do whatever you want. And the cost of that's going to be really, really tiny unless you're loading huge files and transmitting those out.
Stuff like that. Yeah. And that's a consideration also for anytime you have an Alexa hosted skill and you just want to get around some of this hassle, is that you can still continue.
That's what I did.
You can still completely to have an Alexa hosted skill, But then you have a separate S3 bucket on an AWS account just for this purpose. There's no rules against that at all. A. Witter says he's published a couple of skills using notifications. The certification team didn't run any test which actually triggered a notification. That's interesting. Probably not how it should work, but that's interesting feedback.
And that's probably not always the case. So definitely don't bank on them not testing that. It would be my recommendation.
Startup Sanatana said, and I know he's asked this question a few times in multiple places. The question is, are there any suggestions on a reliable smart screen wall switch which can be controlled through voice like Alexa? The challenge I have with this question, and I think one of the reasons that I've not done an effective job of answering this for you, Startup, is that I don't know what a smart screen wall switch is. I know what a smart switch is. Like if you're thinking about like a light switch, I have lots and lots of light switches, and my favorite brand happens to be made by Belkin. It's a brand called Wemo. But there are any number of excellent light switches, power switches that you can use. I don't know if that's what you're asking for, though. I don't. Ryan, what's your interpretation of a smart screen wall switch?
So I've seen these around where people take an iPad and they mount them to the wall, and then they basically have like a special dashboard where there's a bunch of different toggle switches where you can turn on and on different lights, or open the garage door, or drop the movie screen projector, things like that. So that's what came to mind first. And then I haven't seen any of those that have Alexa built in, because usually it's someone taking like an old Fire tablet. Well, I guess it was a Fire. It seems like they're always doing something like hacking it, like taking a Fire tablet, refreshing it with a fresh, clean Android build, and doing things like that.
I know none of us have an Echo Show 15 in our possession yet.
That's what I was going to say.
But I do wonder if that isn't the kind of answer. And I know Startup has made some comments about how he would build his own, and he seems to dabble in hardware quite a bit. But it does feel to me like the Echo Show 15 was almost designed to handle some of those things, right? To give me a panel that allows me to turn things on and off like a smart home kind of hub.
Yeah, because there's widgets, and I'm assuming the widgets will get to a point where you can do that. I don't know if they're going to have that when it ships. I think that we should use this question as a way to get you one, Jeff, so that we can test this out in future office hours.
I mean, that certainly seems reasonable to me. In fact, I would be willing to take Baby Yoda.
Baby Yoda, oh man,
just to be able to put that up there. So something to consider. But so Startup, I hope that helps a little bit, but I don't have great answers for you. Let's see. Tristan Wasser wants to know why Alexa is not able to understand multiple commands in a single sentence. Well, I think that's primarily because of the way much of this is architected. So if you want to do something like turn on the front hall light switch and open the garage, it doesn't know how to parse those effectively. I think that may be something that comes in the future, the capability to do something like that. But that being said, I don't know the specific use case you're talking about, but there are ways in which multiple commands, multiple pieces of information can be shared all at once. We have a concept called multi-value slots. And so within a skill, it used to be very difficult to do something like, I'd like to order a pizza with pepperoni, sausage, and onion. That was a quite tricky way, and I would bet a bunch of the developers that are here in the chat have all come up with their own unique workarounds for how to solve that specific problem. But multi-value slots solves that for us. And so now we could say, I want milk and broccoli and ice cream from the grocery store. Like that works pretty well. But in the simple example that I gave at the beginning, which is like controlling two different smart home devices with two separate commands at one time, that's not easily done. And that's honestly one of the reasons that we have things like routines, so that you can combine those things and then use one command that will then chain through those and do them independently. So Tristan, I hope that answers your question. I think that we're going to continue to see a lot of innovation and growth in how we can speak to these devices in the future. But as things look today, that's the answer.
Yeah.
All right. Oswed on YouTube says, how much time does it take for skill certification? Any insight on the process follows? Is there any limit to send the skill for certification if it fails? Okay, so there's a couple of questions in there. The first one is, I think their expected amount of time is 48 to 72 hours. I think that's even aggressive in some cases. If you have a simple skill or you have one that you are certifying for a second or third time, I think that's a very reasonable expectation. If you have a very large skill or you are dabbling in things that require a lot more review, healthcare, personally identifiable information, monetary transactions, anything like that, you should expect it to be a little bit longer, only because that's going to require more scrutiny and more time. But for your average thing, I think 48 to 72 hours is a pretty reasonable estimate. Now, you asked another question. Is there any limit to how many times I can fail? I'm not aware of one. I will tell you that the turnaround times will get faster if you fail and then you fail again and then you fail again, because they've gotten familiar. They've kept notes on the thing. So I find that future certifications are faster, but the first time is always a little bit slower. And then there's one final question that isn't asked here, but often accompanies these questions, which is there a limit to how many skills I can certify or how many certifications I can have going at once? And from what I understand, and I haven't tested the limits on this completely yet, is that no, there is not a limit. So if you want to build 500 or 5,000 skills, I don't think that there's a limitation. And if you want to certify 100 or 500 of them all at once, also fine. I think that you may stress the certification process. If you push 500 through at once, you may see that the times extend, because I don't think they're normally expecting 500 all at the same time. But there's no rules against it from what I'm aware. So I would say have at it. I would not, however, rely on the certification team as your debugging testing team. They're not going to find all of your errors and issues. And so if you're thinking that you'll lean on them to find all the problems your skill might have, as someone mentioned earlier, they didn't even test potentially some of the notifications from someone's skill. They have a set of things they're testing. You can see that list in the certification guidelines, but they are not, I would not use their testing as confidence that you don't have any bugs or issues in your skill. They won't test every possible pathway for sure.
But your users will, and then they won't come back to your skill. So the best way to keep users and not have them churn is to create the best quality skill you can come up with. So
agreed. And if that means building some unit tests or anything else that can give you the confidence that your code does what it's supposed to do when it's supposed to do it, I can't recommend those practices enough. Gavin Watson wants to know if some devices could have different firmware than others. Yes, that is certainly possible, although I wouldn't expect, unless the device has been unplugged for a very long time, I wouldn't expect a device to be vastly behind, maybe a version behind. And the rollouts do take some time. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of devices. So those rollouts can take some time, but I don't believe it's more than like a week or 10 days. That's me totally guessing, by the way. I don't actually know what our rollout times are. But yes, I suppose it is possible, but I wouldn't expect, unless the device has been unplugged for a good period of time, I wouldn't expect a device to be more than a version behind at any given time. All right. Oswald also wants to know if there's any analytics for monitoring notifications, especially the number of notifications sent successfully or the number of notifications read. I don't believe so. I don't believe that that is something that I've seen in the dev console. Ryan, are you aware of anything there?
No. But that seems like something I would want.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that that's a valuable thing to know. I'm jumping in right now to just go to the analytics tab and see if there's anything even there. Let's go find a real skill. Jeff, come on. Go to analytics. I know you guys can't see my screen, but I don't even see. I don't even see anything about notifications. Is that one of those?
I mean,
turn on in the model. In the interfaces, is notifications one of those?
On interfaces.
Audio player, video app, can fulfill, Alexa APL, web API. No. No, but this feels like a really good piece of feedback. So I'm going to take this one as some feedback to provide to our team. Because I feel like if we're going to send notifications, you need to know how those things work. And you wouldn't have the ability to even instrument them yourself. Like with your skill, you can technically save all of your JSON input and output to see what happened, how it happened, whatever, and you could instrument and build your whole own analytics engine if you wanted to. But for notifications, those are outside of your vision, and so I feel like that is something that would be really important to look at. So I'm gonna add this to my list of things to get some feedback on.
Yeah, and I'm thinking just from a long time ago, I was a mobile developer, or at least I pretended to be one for about a year or two. And that was like key stats that people wanted to know, like, did the push notification get sent? What happened to it? Was it clicked on? Was it open? Did the user engage with it? Just like any other channel, email, SMS, people want to know what happened to those. So if nothing else, you can resend them the same notification without getting exhaustion of getting multiple messages over and over and over again. So this is really good feedback.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this was launched. The next question. I'm digging. So I didn't even read the question yet, but I'm already digging for the answer. This is related to Fernando. He wants to know, when he's using the audio player, he has the data he needs. How can he update the audio player to show the cover art and the name of the song on the screen? Now, this is something I know for a little while we could not do. This was something that you could not do. But I believe we have been able to do this. Yes. Okay. So let me see if I can grab a link to this.
By the way, I love RxJS and observable chains.
So Fernando, I'm posting this to all the chat stuff. So you should see this come through on YouTube. But on the audio player interface reference in the Alexa Tech Docs, there is a segment here. I'll share my screen real quick. Ryan, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the audio player interface reference, and down here, about halfway down, there is custom and default audio player display, and it talks about how you have this audio item metadata that you can provide to the response, and it allows you to add this kind of information where you can do a background image, artwork, as well as like title, album, artist kind of stuff. So that is the answer to that question. Go back to that. Okay, so Swagwy Mongwy says on Twitch, hello, you work on a feature to stop using the activation word to activate Alexa. Example, when the timer or the alarm clock rings, Alexa goes into listening mode automatically. We just have to say stop, and Alexa stops the timer alarm, save for calls. I think this is a feature request. Are you working on a feature to stop using the activation word to activate Alexa? Swagwy Mongwy, so one of the things we don't do here is talk about the future, but I'm not aware of anything related to wake wordless interactions. So I don't have a good answer for you on that. I think it's a neat idea, and I'll catalog this and send it over to our team. But I feel like things get real messy if the device doesn't know deliberately that you're talking to it. So as A. Witter said, that probably won't happen. But it's an interesting idea for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that Alexa does really, really well is it only listens when you are telling it to listen, or it's only listening in different scenarios where it's expected to be listening. So meaning I can predict when it's going to be listening or not. It's not an unknown whether it's listening and sending data back to the cloud. So that could get into some fuzzy territory. I like the scenario you called out does make sense. But yeah, that kind of gets into some weird territory where you could be cursing and saying other things while the alarm's going off and it's picking that up.
So Luke Leon just asked, quite possibly the most important question we're going to have today,
Agreed.
which is, are you going to watch the new Matrix movie? And the answer is yes, of course I'm going to watch the Matrix movie.
Of course.
I wouldn't miss it. So yeah, I will most certainly. Ryan, are you going to watch it?
Yeah, I don't know what to expect. Like the original movie, mind blowing. The third movie had its challenges.
Sure, it was a great action.
Yes, we've had 20 years now to figure out how to do this follow-up movie. So I'm trying to curb my expectations because I want to get really, really excited about it, but I'm also trying to be cautious.
And I hope that this isn't a spoiler, but if you want to put this on mute for a second, just in case you don't want anything that even resembles a spoiler, now is your moment. Now is your warning. But my understanding is that they're approaching this movie as if the second and third movies didn't happen. I don't know really what that means, but it gives me a lot of optimism and hope for good things to come.
Yes.
So I don't know anything more than that, but that was something that I read, and I'm just sharing that with all of you. Okay.
To be clear, I have a countdown timer on my phone that's counting down to the release of the new Matrix movie. Just like I have a countdown timer for Dune on Friday, so that will be my Friday plans.
Yeah. Is it coming out this Friday?
This Friday. Yep, I already got my tickets.
I'm not even paying that much attention. That's amazing. Maybe I have Friday night plans now. All right. Geronimo on Twitch says, hi, since some weeks, my older Echoes, my show first gen, my several dots third gen, the reaction time is really delayed. For example, I say Echo and it just reacts after 1 to 2 seconds, which wasn't the case earlier. Wi-Fi strength is the same like in the past, good to very good connectivity. I also tried to factory reset one of the dots, but the latency remained the same. Do you have any idea what else I could do? I don't. If you've gone through the process of factory resetting, that checks all boxes that I could possibly imagine, because you've rejoined it with your account, you've obviously rebooted the device, and you've reconnected it to your Wi-Fi. So it's actually, I don't know what's going on with my hair today. So you've reconnected it to your Wi-Fi. So in case, like, I had some issues with mine when I replaced my router. I went to a completely new mesh system, had the same SSID, had the same password. So a lot of my devices just reconnected automatically. But I found they weren't working very well, and it's because they had connected to the 2 gigahertz signal, not the 5. And so everything seemed just a little off, a little wonky. It was working, but it was slow. And so everything you just described seems like what I would recommend. I don't know that I have better feedback. This is also an opportunity to really test the powers of Amazon customer service. Amazon, especially the .com side of our business, is exceptionally good at making sure that you are happy, especially with an Amazon product. So if you're having these issues, this might be a good opportunity for you to just go to Amazon.com or wherever you shop, co.uk or whatever your locale is, and go open a conversation with the or the Amazon customer service folks and let them know your issue. I have myself been able to get new devices or get replacements. And sometimes they'll even like just send you a gift card as an apology or whatever. So it's worth your while to at least explore it. But I don't have anything else that I could recommend beyond the full factory reset. That should check all the boxes for trying to figure this out. Let's see. Brian Tarbox raises another fantastic point, and I wish that Arunjit was here to talk about this. Is there any hope that someday APL and APLA will have a reasonable error reporting? Every time I create a new APL page, I spend 5 to 10 hours in invalid response hell. Well, we would never accept a compiler interpreter that said syntax error, but I won't tell you what it was or where it was, which is basically the current state of APL. Brian, that is a very valid criticism. It's something that I fought with myself. And if you don't mind, I would love to pass this message along to Arunjit Singh, who is the PM for APL. Also, Arun is on Slack. So if you look up Arunjit Singh, I'm sure he would love to hear your feedback as well if you're not already having conversations with him. But I will grab this comment and I will make sure that this is passed along, because this is really phenomenal feedback that I feel like I've been saying for a while, but it carries so much more weight coming from all of you than it does from me, because I whine and complain all the time, and they're tired of it. So it's good to hear it from all of you.
My tip on this, and this is not, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I do a lot of my APL development using what menu item is it? It's, if you go under build and then multimodal responses, it opens a new tab where you can design APL and get a preview of what it's going to do. I find that very, very, very helpful. So I'll design out my JSON there and then bring it over into my backend skill and test it. Because yes, making a JSON change, hitting save, hitting deploy in your Lambda function, then going and testing it is tedious. I found that multimodal tool is kind of buried, but I found it really, really helpful to at least get a lot of troubleshooting done. So
Good
it's
feedback.
a really, really good tool. It works really well.
I wonder if there is also, I don't know if this exists, but I wonder if there's a JSON linter specific for APL that would allow you to like check minor syntax issues and stuff like that. Because I tend to live in VS Code, and I feel like that's one of my biggest issues, is that I mistyped a property or something, and it doesn't necessarily recognize those things. But if there was something that could do some validation, and it feels like Alex, who is here in the comments, may have some feedback on that. I haven't gotten that far yet, though. Master AJ is here on YouTube. Are we going to be able to send 64-bit encoded audio to the Alexa endpoint via HTTP2 requests, bypassing the step to write to S3? I don't know. That's a pretty hardcore request, and I also don't know what our plans are for the future of that. But this is again, these kinds of questions that you guys provide when you stump Ryan or I feel like there should be a prize or a badge or something. When you guys hit us with stumpers like this, I want you guys to know we do take this information and provide this to our product teams. I will reach out to the folks that are responsible for the audio encoding and endpoints and stuff like that to talk with them about, how should they solve this problem. Sometimes I get responses, sometimes I don't, sometimes it takes me a month. So I want you guys to know, if we don't have an answer for you today or in the next day or so, I promise we are working on it. We like to think that we're very diligent about this, and it is really important to us that we solve your problems. But we're navigating an organization of over 3,000 people. And so sometimes just finding the right person can be challenging, and then getting them to take the time to help us. While they are very interested in all that, they also have tight deadlines that they're cruising towards. So we're trying to be respectful of their time, but also get the answers that are necessary. So Soundmaster AJ, I'll dig into that one for you, but I don't have an answer today. All right. Fernando's still talking about his radio skill. I also want to update the cover and name of the song on the screen. I think I already answered that one. They're talking about still using the get S3 pre-signed URLs. And Alex has recommended that you just write a wrapper function. Then you pass in your collection of S3 paths, and then it can generate all of them for you in one call. That's pretty cool.
And then jam it in the data sources.
Yep. Soundmaster AJ said he's been studying audio synthesis AI networks that might run on a Lambda layer. And he's trying to find ways to reduce steps to keep latency as low as possible. It makes total sense to me, but I don't have the answers for you today.
Yeah, I'm sure one of the reasons why S3 is the go-to is because it scales extraordinarily well. And so as far as like end user experience, it's a great one because you need an audio file there. It's available in S3 immediately, not waiting on a third party API to return it. But what you're talking about sounds really awesome though.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next question. Brian Tarbox wants to know, do touches on a screened device count towards your utterance count? I would believe that they do, because they are still passing a response back to your skill. I would think that they do, but I would need, if you're talking about a specific metric or measurement that's inside the developer console analytics, I would need to dig in deeper onto what exactly you're looking at. If I go to the utterances tab, number of utterances, as I look at this, yes, I would think that it does count for those things. I think maybe utterances is maybe even a wrong term. So they define utterances as the total number of utterances which ended during a session, which could include utterances ending due to an error. So, yeah, I believe they really should be almost like interaction, not utterance. That term might need to be changed, because I think as we touch the screen, we're passing information back to the skill to let them know our choice in the same way as if someone had spoken. So I would err on the side of yes, they should count as an utterance count in the analytics.
Yeah, we'd have to. You could instrument this yourself and verify
for sure
in your backend code. Not to push more work onto you, but that's what you have to do to verify this. Interesting.
All right, so the next two are related. Swagly Mongui says on Twitch, I have lots of ideas to improve Alexa. Where can I send them? Send them to me. Send them to Ryan, either in Twitch. I know that I also have this here. That is my Amazon email address. If you want to just write up an email address or an email message, that would be fine too. And I will add that to our report. We send a monthly report over to our product team to say, here's all the things we're hearing from developers. So I will make sure to include any and all feedback that you have. But keep in mind, I am talking primarily to the development technologies team. So if you have an idea about like making the ring a different color, that's more a consumer device-based feature. Probably won't carry as much weight. But if you're clear about this stuff, I can try and make sure that it's routed to the appropriate team. Anyway, that's my email address. Feel free to reach out. Zella is the same way. With APL, there's currently no statistics on APL, which users use APL, which don't, which display to sizes do the users use, which version, etc. Yeah, with all of that stuff today, you kind of have to track it yourself, which is unfortunate, but you can see that stuff, right? In every Alexa request that you receive, you get information about the device's screen size in dimensions, as well as with relative terms like large, landscape and things like that. So you can track it. It's just not currently available in the analytics. And I will again include all of this stuff. Data Trial wants to know about all the things that are behind me and if they're all Alexa devices. Well, most of the things are not Alexa devices. But I do have a bunch here behind me. This is the Echo Show 8. This is the new one with like the widescreen camera. I have some Echo buttons here. These don't really get supported anymore. Echo frames. This is the Dash wand that used to have Alexa into it. That's not supported anymore. This is just an Echo Dot and an awesome Avengers Tower.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. This is the Echo Show 5. This is the original Echo Plus, which has like a home Zigbee hub built in. This is the Echo Look, another discontinued device. This is the Echo Show 10. And over here a little bit further, you can't see, I have the Echo Flex. I have an original Echo Show. I have an Echo Spot, and I have the round Echo, the round red Echo. Actually, it was kind of cool to get that color. So yeah, many Echo devices here behind me. You will see that wall change from time to time as I get new devices. So as the Echo Show 15 shows up, whenever that is, I'm sure that will end up on this shelf somewhere. Oh, you know what? Trey last mentioned another good thing to Swagui Mongui, which was we also have a Uservoice website. And so on Uservoice, you can recommend specific features that you'd like to see and upvote ones that other people have created. And you can find that at alexa.uservoice.com. I don't know if I have that here. Oh, yeah, I do. You can also go to alexa.design/uservoice. Takes you to the same place. But there you can see all of the recommendations from other developers. You can vote them up. You can comment on them. So I would recommend, if you have specific features that you're requesting, that's another place to go. But I'm happy to gather your feedback as well if that's easier for you. All right. Soundmaster AJ say Dune is amazing. I saw the original Dune and I thought that was an interesting movie. I'm looking forward to this new one, but I have not seen that yet either. Gabriel
Should be
Perez is
good.
looking forward to the Matrix movie. Soundmaster AJ mentions that they have reached out to Amazon and gotten devices replaced for free. So that's some good motivation to think about that. Swagui said that Google is going to release a feature that he mentioned, so he wanted to know whether or not we are working on a similar feature or not. Unfortunately, we don't reveal any of that kind of information here, but I honestly don't know whether or not that will be something we release in the near future or not. Gabriel Perez wants to know if there's any developer contests upcoming for a cool T-shirt or other reward coming soon. Not that I'm aware of. The closest thing I've got for you is that I'm actively working on getting us a Alexa developer store, where then we could give things away, but also you could just go in and be like, oh, I want that T-shirt. And it will be built in a way, if we follow my plan, where it's not a store designed to profit. So we'll be selling shirts at really reasonable costs, because all we're trying to do is make sure we can get stuff into your hands. So you'll be paying more or less the cost that we get for a lot of the items. Let's see. DJ MKY says, I'm going through the Alexa docs setting up in-skill purchasing for my Alexa skill. Does anyone have any recommendations or examples or video tutorials that they would recommend? There is an entire, I believe there is an entire template-based skill. If I go create new skill, and let's just give it a name. And I believe no, how do we not have that? That seems like a big miss. Ryan, when you choose a template, when you first create a new skill, we have the fact skill, high-low game, pizza ordering, there's a bunch of other stuff in here. None of them have in-skill purchasing in them. That feels like a miss.
Yes. My screen just went blank. Can you still see me?
I cannot see you either. No, you are gone.
I'm still here. I don't know where I went.
All right, I will bump you off the screen, but if I see your video come back, I will bring you back on.
All right.
So one of the recommendations I could make for you, and I hate doing this because this is just my personal code, and we should have more official ways to do this. But let me go to my personal GitHub, which is Jeff Blankenberg, and I have built a bunch of skills that have in-skill purchasing in it. You're back?
I'm back.
Yeah, you are.
That was weird.
Welcome back.
My camera just turned off. Sorry, friends.
Which one do I want to use here?
I was looking through so I found we do have some. So in GitHub, we have a few different GitHub organizations. One is Alexa samples. And Jeff, I'm going to send you a GitHub link. So cool. In Alexa samples, we have a bunch of different repositories with full source code, showing off a variety of different things. I found one. I haven't looked at this. I've never looked through it, but the name is Skill Sample Node.js Fact and Skill Purchases. Seems like this should be relevant to what you're looking to do. Look around the other Alexa samples repos. We have a ton of good content in there. And I'm sure if there's a Node.js one, there might be a Python one. I hope there's a Python one. But then there's probably lots of other great examples as well. So those would also be a great place to go.
Yeah, it looks like this is something I worked on with Greg a long time ago.
It's dated. It's dated. But that should be
the core
fine,
is there.
hopefully.
And yes. Honestly, going through the tutorial probably will just give you a bunch of tips and tricks to keep in mind. So that might be more useful than the code itself. All right. So DJMKY, hopefully that helps you. Habuma1 says, along the same lines as Brian Tarbox's APL error request, I'd like it if there were better error reporting when using Alexa hosted skills. For example, I develop locally, then git push, a change made to my interaction model, but because I made a dumb mistake, nothing gets applied. The only way I've found is to copy and paste my locally developed JSON into the JSON editor in the browser to see if it complains. It would be nice if when something like that happens, there'd be a go-to place to see errors. Fantastic feedback. While I agree with you, I don't have a solution for you. Yeah. But that is good feedback. Brian Tarbox wants to know if it would be possible to let a skill ask for a user to leave a review. You're allowed to do that. You can say, hey, we'd love for you to give us a review. Please go to this website or scan this QR code I just put on the screen or whatever. And it would take them directly to your page in the store. That's allowed. What's not allowed is for you to say, please give us a 5-star review or any kind of specific kind of review. You will get blocked for doing those kinds of things. So make sure that you're not asking for a 5-star review. But if you're asking for a review, that's totally fine. You could write a card to their Alexa app. You could put something on the screen if they have APL enabled on their screen. You could also, if you've collected their text information, like their cell phone, you could send them a text message with a link to your page as well. So there's a number of ways to do that, but I wouldn't recommend trying to compel them to do that by just talking to them. I think you're going to need to give them some clearer mechanism. And if you are going to talk to them, then it needs to be a really clear, concise URL that is memorizable on first listen. So that's one of the reasons that we use the alexa.design stuff, is because it's really easy to say alexa.design/Slack. And you can play that back in your head and remember it. And once you've seen a few of these alexa.design links, you can throw that away, right? You don't have to memorize that part anymore. And so now it's just like, oh yeah, I need to go to their custom URL for Slack or whatever. So I think using some kind of bit.ly or custom bit.ly would make it easier if you do want to do it all with speech. But getting them to make a review of your skill will require them to go to a browser. And in order to get them to the appropriate page quickly, it feels like you've got to give them some kind of tool to do that. All right. Bigfoot Bum wants to know, when you make an announcement via Alexa, Ryan, do you use announcements in your house?
I do.
I just told someone about this the other day, and they blew their minds. They were calling each child individually by saying, call Ryan's room or call Jeff's room or whatever, and then like talking to the kid and be like, come down for dinner. I was like, you could just announce that, right? And she goes, what is that? I was like, it'll just announce it on all your devices.
Yeah, and I have the same complaint as Bigfoot Bum. I'm like, I don't need to hear my own voice echoed right in front of me. But that's how it works. Unless anyone has figured out a way to have it omit the device it's coming from, which would be cool.
That I do not know. But it's a really, again, we've got some really good feedback today. So please always keep that stuff coming. Again, we can't take action on it today, but we will talk with our team about figuring that piece out. Ryan Tarbox says his Premier League skill just hit 111,000 utterances in the last 30 days. Congratulations. That's awesome. I mean, that's an incredible achievement. That's very, very good. And he says he's done some instrumentation, and it's about 80% non-screen to 20% screen devices. Does that match the ratio of devices in the wild? Well, it's funny you bring that up. I am writing a talk right now for reInvent, which is at the end of November. I call it the State of Alexa, and it's meant to be a talk to talk about where we are, like put a stake in the ground and say, here's where we are right now. And that was one of the specific pieces of data that I requested, was what percentage of devices have screens. That is not a piece of information they either have or are willing to share with me, because I have a big mouth. So I don't know the answer to that question. I wish that I did. My gut says that's probably a little low. I would like to see that like 25, 30%. But if you told me that was the real data, I think I would believe you. I know that there are many, many more $35 Echo Dots out there than there are $200 Echo Shows. So that seems reasonable to me. But as far as what the actual ratio is, I do not know. Okay, S. Ray Sang on Twitch says, when a skill goes through going through certification, I'm combining your two comments into one conversation. When my skill's going through certification, there are people that use it. Automated tests, human tests, a number of ways in which my skill is being used. Is there a way to filter out those events, those intents, those utterances generated by the certification process so that I don't treat them as regular users? The short answer is no. But you do have the ability to recognize that, like, hey, I just put my skill in certification. You could set a flag in your application that says, oh, my skill is currently in certification. Anything that happens right now, I would want that to happen. But if you have like beta testers or other users that are not part of that process, that kind of breaks that a little bit. But no, there's no designation in the request that, hey, by the way, this is a certification tester. They will look identical to any other user to you. So,
and that's kind of the point. Like, they want to, when there's certification testing, like, they want the experience of a real user. So right. If there was a way to distinguish them, they wouldn't tell you, because then you could give them a premium experience and right. leave all your sly stuff that you're not supposed to do out. So I think it's kind of by design the way they have that set up. It
is, but I also think, I think what they're
for
going
analytics, I could see, yeah.
Like when I've run my skill through certification, I have a user table where I keep track of users, and I will suddenly have 150 new users, and I'm like, I don't want any of those to live in the system, right?
Yeah.
So how do I know if they're real or fake? And I get their perspective, but the point you make, Ryan, is valid. We don't want you to be able to tell the difference. So I think that's a really good point. Keith Lewis on Facebook says, we have many Alexa devices and apps on the devices in the house. We stay on the 2.4 network, but we've noticed that devices that are registered to one member of the family won't show on the network to another member. Any reason why? Yes, because devices are joined by the owner, the user, the account holder, not by the Wi-Fi network that they're on. So as an example, if I went to a hotel and I hooked up my Alexa, I wouldn't want it to be aware of or capable of identifying other devices that are on the network. But if I have two of my own and they were set up in different parts of the hotel, it would be able to talk to them, because it's all done via the internet, not by the local network. So if a device is owned by another person, it should not be recognizable in any way by the first person. That being said, you can set up an Amazon family if they're all in the same house. So I'll give you a quick demonstration of this. Alexa, who am I?
I think you're Jeff. This is Jeff's account.
So it designated that I am the speaker, the person actually speaking, and also we're on Jeff's account right now. Now you can, because I have this Amazon family set up with my wife, watch this. Alexa, switch accounts.
Now in Sarah Blankenberg's account.
Alexa, who am I?
I think you're Jeff. This is Sarah Blankenberg's account.
So you can see in that case, now we're operating on a device that's in Sarah's account. But because we've set this up for Amazon Family, all of our devices still recognize each other because they have both of the accounts enabled on those devices. So in that case, that may solve your problem, but I would take a look at whether or not you can set up the Amazon Family to join those things together. Glayton Franco wants to know if my wall is part of a store or if this is actually just a wall in my home. It is, embarrassingly enough, a wall in my home, but it looks pretty awesome. Thank you for noticing. Let's see. Trade Last posted a link.
Already posted the Python version of the Node.js one that I posted.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks, Trade Last.
And just like that, we're 5 minutes over. I didn't even notice. This has been so much fun. Okay, I think we've hit all the questions. There's a couple of good comments here, but I think we've hit all the questions, Ryan.
Yeah, I sent you in the private chat, Jeff. I sent you the link to the. So we are hosting but Alexa is hosting a Tech Talk this Thursday more geared towards devices, but I think I'm going to tune in because I think it's super, super fascinating. It's basically talking about all the acoustic challenges that the devices go through in order to function correctly, to be able to hear you from across the room. It's going to deep dive into all those acoustic, nerdy things that I think. So Jeff just pasted a link to the registration for that Tech Talk. Definitely join. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. Even if you never build a device, just to appreciate all the engineering that goes into these devices.
Agreed.
Is kind of mind blowing. Yeah, it's really cool.
The science of sound is remarkably deep, and it's really kind of cool to think about how our devices work and how they interpret a lot of the sounds that they hear. So make sure you register, make sure you check that stuff out, and we will see you guys next week. By the way, next week we'll be doing office hours, but I will be live from Project Voice X in Destin, Florida. Ooh. So if I can do it, if I can get a good enough signal, I'll be doing office hours from the beach. So hopefully we'll make that happen. Anyway, I will see you guys all next week. Have a great one, everybody.